Hi everybody, so before I begin this video I just want to say I've noticed some comments have been disappearing under my videos, for example there's videos that have a few comments and then suddenly they have zero. I don't know what's going on with that. I haven't been deleting any comments from any of my videos, so in case you're wondering, it isn't that I'm censoring anyone. But I want to talk today about unanswered prayers briefly, and I want to kind of go into some of the things that Pope Francis said in his general audience on Wednesday the 26th of May, because let's be honest, sometimes we pray, I certainly have felt this, we pray a lot for something, we pray for a long time, and we feel like the prayer isn't being answered, like God is ignoring us. It doesn't feel good. I mean, we keep being told about the power of prayer, and yet there we are when we're praying an awful lot and really praying hard and really meaning it and really asking for something desperately, and we get nothing for it. We feel like, well, what's going on here? Does God even care what I have to say? You know, you'll hear a lot of things about miracles and miraculous cures and such, and those kind of give you hope again that, oh, God is answering people's prayers. You know, people are going to certain places or praying a lot, and then they're suddenly cured from something really horrible, and it makes you go, oh, you know, it kind of restores your faith in prayer. But then there'll be other times when you hear about things. For example, recently there was this young Brazilian boy who had a really bad illness for a long time, and he was painting all kinds of pictures to try to raise money to help with, help pay for the operations. And he also prayed. He drew a picture of his, I think it was the Virgin Mary of kidneys, he called it, and it was to help with a successful operation so that Our Lady would look over him and make the operation successful. And I think almost certainly his parents and other people close to him would have been praying very hard for him to survive, and yet he died of COVID. So a situation like that can make you think, what's going on here, God? Here's this young boy, he's really hoping to be cured, his family is, and yet he just dies from COVID. And it can make you really kind of maybe not lose your faith completely, but certainly lose your faith in the power of prayer. So here's some of the things that Pope Francis said in relation to this. So these are all quotes from a Catholic news agency article on the general audience from Wednesday. So the first one is, the Pope stressed that God's time is not our time, and said that the gospel accounts of Jesus' life are full of requests for prayer and healing. We see that at times Jesus' response is immediate, whereas in some other cases it is delayed and it seems that God does not answer. He goes on to say, think of the Canaanite woman who begs Jesus for her daughter. This woman has to insist for a long time to be heard. Or think of the paralytic brought by his 4 friends. Jesus initially forgives his sins and only later heals his body. So I suppose that could be the first thing, to say that this might not be instant if you pray. Patience is required. Sometimes people pray and they think, right, if in a few days their prayer hasn't been answered, or even a few weeks, then what's going on? God doesn't care. Sometimes this can happen a long time after you pray, but you need to keep praying and persist in praying, and sometimes it could be months, it could be even years before something happens. So it isn't just about, right, I've prayed a number of times, that's it, nothing's happened, so I'm giving up. So that seems to be the first message. These things can take time. The article goes on. The Pope explained that prayer is not a magic wand, but a dialogue with God. When we pray, we need to be humble, he said. Then he gives the example of women wearing a veil if they go to Mass. So in this case, for example, it's when you're praying, you're not supposed to be praying for something that you want. I mean, you do ask for things, but at the same time, you need to remember to say, let your will be done. So he says, in this way, we must tell ourselves before praying that God will give me what is right to give. He knows. So sometimes you can be praying for something and it absolutely isn't good for you. God is going to give you what is good for you. Jesus had great wisdom by putting our Father on our lips. Better to leave it to him. Hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done. The Pope said that after Jesus prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane, Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, it might appear that God did not listen. The Son must drink fully from the chalice of the Passion, Francis said, but Holy Saturday is not the final chapter, because on the 3rd day, Sunday, there is the resurrection. The Son of God, when praying, it seemed like he even wasn't listened to. It's like, if ever you think it's an injustice that I'm praying for something and it hasn't been answered and this terrible thing has happened and God seems to not care, remember that God in flesh on earth, praying to the Father, asking for a certain thing and it not happening, that would probably be the greatest injustice ever in our eyes, wouldn't it? Because God, without sin, the Son of God, Jesus Christ, he asks for something, if possible, let this not happen, this horrible cruelty that he's going to have to go to, and yet he still had to go through it. And he also had, later on when he's on the cross, he says, why have you forsaken me? So again, it's almost like, it seems like it's a despair, and we're talking about the Son of God here. So that shows us also that it isn't unusual for us to be upset sometimes when we don't seem to get an answer to a prayer of ours. But it's the way it is. And what the Pope said before, we really do have to try and just understand that God knows what's best. Some things in our own human way we just can't get. And I know this from personal experience. I've also been praying for things and I felt like I didn't get them. And then I've been like, oh, great. Well, so you don't really care about me. And of course, this will be great ammunition for skeptics and secular people who will just be like, yeah, that's right, you're praying, and well, where's God? Where is he? Why isn't he answering you? But you've really got to not fall into that trap. And one more quote from the article. Evil is never the Lord of the last day. God is the Lord of the last day, the day when all human longings for salvation will be fulfilled. We learn this humble patience to wait for the grace of the Lord, to wait for the last day. Many times the penultimate day is very bad because human suffering is bad, but the Lord is there, and on the last day he solves everything. So this is a really hard one for us. It's basically saying there might be times when you pray for something in this world and you don't get it, and then you feel like, well, looks like God didn't want to answer my prayer. And this could even be something as horrible, and I know it's easy to say, as you're praying for a child to get better and it dies. I mean, I know a friend she knows a family, and the whole family was praying for this 1-year-old child who was in a very serious critical condition in hospital, and the child died, and they were all praying the rosary and praying that the child make it, and it didn't, and that's really hard to take. And it is suffering, as it says there, it's suffering, but if we can just understand that and remember that the truth that we know, that this life here really isn't the significant existence that we have. It's going to be the existence we have after that matters. Then maybe we can try and understand it in some way, although I know and acknowledge that it's very difficult. And those are just a few thoughts that I had about going through some of the things Pope Francis is telling us in relation to prayers going unanswered, because I know this is something that people really struggle with when they pray, and sometimes really, like, you really feel like you're praying from the heart, really desperately asking for something, and then you just get nothing. And I know, as I said from experience, but you've got to, I think these words from Pope Francis are very helpful and do try to explain to us things that we should know, but sometimes we forget because we can get angry and have various other emotions. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully see you again soon.